Alright, to get this done, you are going to need brake rotors, brake pads, jack stands, torque wrench, pry bar, brake adjuster tool, 15mm wrench. You're going to need an 18mm wrench and socket. You're going to need a 13mm wrench and socket, ratchets to go with those. You're going to need extensions, needle nose pliers, clamp, scrap wood, wire wheel, red thread locker, anti-seize, braking caliper grease, penetrating oil, brake cleaner, rags, and an oil pan. After we remove the wheel, we are going to remove our caliper. To remove the slider bolt, we're going to take a 15mm wrench, place it on the slider, and a 13mm socket, and we're going to place that on the bolt. Go ahead and break it free. We'll go ahead and do the exact same thing to this bottom slider and remove both the bolts. Now we can take our pry bar and place it in between that caliper and your brake pad and start compressing the piston. I like to compress it enough to the point where I can remove this caliper. Then I like to use another method to compress it the rest of the way. Once you get the caliper off, go ahead and just set it up top, hang it up. You don't want it hanging on this brake line. We can go ahead and remove the pads. They just slide out of the clips there like so. You may need a pry bar to help get those off. And if you're cheap like me, you like to get the full life out of your pads. Just kidding, don't do this, not safe. On the back side, we're gonna remove these two 18mm bolts, and that will allow us to remove this caliper bracket. Things are very tight back here, so you're most likely gonna need to use a wrench. I'm gonna double it up just to give myself a little more leverage. If the rotor's never been removed before, you're gonna have these factory clips on them. So these we can just take off. Don't worry about destroying them. They are not going to go back on. We're good to remove the rotor. You may need to smack it around a little bit to get it to loosen up. You could use a rubber mallet and a pry bar. If that doesn't work, there's a good chance there is a groove worn on the inside of this from your emergency brake. And if that's the case, you can adjust it and get those brake pads to close up. That way the brake pads will clear the ridge and this will pop right off. I'll show you how to do that here in a second. Now on the back side of the rotor here, there is this plug. We'll go ahead and pull that so we can get access to the adjuster. It is very helpful if you have one of these brake adjuster tools. Turn the adjuster a few times to get those brake pads to close up. Now here's a view of that without the rotor in the way to give you an idea of what you're looking for. I'm going to take some brake cleaner and just clean up inside of here the best that I can. Take some penetrating oil and spray it on the adjuster and the pivot. I'm now going to use a wire wheel on this drill to clean up the hub. I'm going to apply anti-seize to the hub. That way if we ever need to get off our new brake rotor, it will be much easier. I'm now going to install the new rotor. We're going to take our brake adjusting tool and we're going to adjust the e-brakes until they are just making contact with that rotor. You don't want the rotor locked up. You want to still be able to spin it freely, and you should be able to hear those brakes just ever so slightly rubbing that surface. We'll take some brake clean and clean up the rotor, and you're also going to want to clean the backside of that rotor. And it might be a little easier to do this before you put it on. We'll go ahead and prep the bracket to go back on the Jeep. We'll remove these 4 clips that hold in the brake pads. Now we can go ahead and remove these slides. And I do have a slide that is seized up, so I need to get this out. Now this is what you don't want to find when cleaning up this bracket. I'll go ahead and show you what a good one of these slides look like. Pull off the boot here, still a bunch of grease in it, no rust whatsoever. That's still good to use. Now here is a bad one. Bunch of rust on it, no grease whatsoever. Now what that is doing is it's not letting that caliper actually slide back and forth and wear with the brakes. So that's putting all that braking power on the opposite side of the vehicle, which is why I completely lost brake pads on that side. Well, this side was still fine.
Thank you for holding.
Alrighty guys, so it is the next day and we are back to working on old peg leg here, and I went ahead and purchased new slide pins and new boots for that rear caliper. I think it would have been possible to clean this up, but this boot is very loose on here and I think that's what led in the water and caused it to rust in the first place. So in my opinion, it's just gonna be better to replace it. It's easier to replace this pin than it would be the entire caliper in the future if it gets water in there again. So this is scrap. If you're gonna reuse your old pins, just make sure that they are cleaned up very nice. Spray them down with some brake clean and wipe them off with a rag. And you do want to make sure that there is no rust on them and that surface is smooth. Now to clean up the boot, you can just send your rag through it and then squeeze the boot and spin it around, and that will clean up all the grease on the inside of it. To grease up the pins, I'm using the CRC brake and caliper grease. You don't have to use this stuff, but whatever you do use, make sure it is made for high temperatures. Now you do want to apply a liberal amount of grease to this pin, and you want to be sure you get plenty of grease up in this groove up here, because that's where it seals up against the boot. Go ahead and reinstall the boot and prep the other pin. Next, we're going to clean up our caliper bracket. Now the areas we need to pay attention to are inside the holes where the slide pins slide in and out of. Those need to be clean. We also need to clean up these grooves because that's where the boots are going to seal. And then we also need to clean up these 4 surfaces here where the pads are going to slide against. Those need to be very clean as well. To clean out the holes, I'm just going to spray some brake clean in there and stuff a rag down in there to try to clean as much of that grease out as I can. Next, I'm going to take a wire wheel and clean out the surfaces that mate with that boot. Now, if you had a pin rust up in your caliper bracket like mine, you're going to have to clean all that rust out. So I'm going to use brake clean and a tube brush, and I'm going to clean out all that rust. Now, if it's bad enough, you may just want to replace this entire caliper bracket. And I'll throw a link down below to all the products I used in this video. I'm going to use a wire wheel to clean up these surfaces for the pads. Now that our bracket's all cleaned up, we're going to get ready to install the clips. So I'm going to grease up the surface where the clips are going to go. When we install these clips, we're going to have to pay attention. They have this large loop on the one end. That's going to get installed away from the rotor towards the outside of the bracket. And then they also have this flange here. That's going to mate with this flat part here, and that's going to be facing up if we have the caliper in this orientation. So you just want to go ahead and install all these clips that same way. And I like to throw a little bit of grease on the outside of these clips because that's what that brake pad's going to be sliding against. And I also like to add a little bit of grease up here by the caliper slides. That way those boots will seal up and you won't get water getting into those pins. You can now reinstall the pins and make sure that the boots are seated properly. Make 100% sure those pins slide in and out real nicely without binding up anywhere. Take this time to ensure that your brake rotor is completely clean and free of any grease. Reinstall the caliper bracket. These 18mm bolts get torqued down to 77 foot-pounds, and you may need an extension and a short socket to clear some of these suspension components. Take this time and double check your rotor to make sure you didn't get any grease on it while installing your caliper. We'll then take the brake pad with the wear indicator and install that on the inside, and the other brake pad gets installed on the outside. Now, since we're installing brand new brake pads and they are a lot wider, we'll have to compress this piston the entire way in order to slide it over top of those. The way I like to do it is take a piece of this is 3/4 inch plywood, just scrap I had lying around, and I like to use a clamp and just slowly compress that piston. Now, you can use a pry bar, but by doing that, I think you're more likely to damage that seal around the piston, and then you'll have a leaking caliper, and that's not good. And when you're using the clamp on the caliper, make sure you're clamping on the caliper itself and not on the bleed screw or the banjo bolt. Take a little bit of grease and apply it around the piston and also these 2 surfaces on the end here. That'll just help keep your brakes quiet. We'll now reinstall the caliper. That'll just slide on. You'll have to pull in your slide pins. Now, red Loctite was used on these bolts from the factory, so I'm going to reapply some. We'll need our 15mm wrench to hold the slide, and then we'll use our 13mm socket and a torque wrench, and we will torque these down to 28 foot-pounds. Now, the last step is to reinstall the wheel, and you're done.